Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. This is a daily NBA show that we've been doing with Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com, long-term industry veteran, successful handicapper for 30 years. Today is Friday, March 6th, and we've got a big card. Joe Duffy, thanks for being back with us.
Thank you for having me, St. Peter Loshak.
A lot of games I'm thinking about. The first one maybe is a little bit obvious. See what you think about it. First of all, Indiana, right? They were 5.5 on the overnight line. Now it's -6, and Indy is just either obviously on an upswing, right? They're 7-1 against spread over their last 8. Chicago's off of back-to-back. They beat OKC at home, which was impressive, but they're just they're covering. They covered 3 of their last 4, but they've got a lot of injuries. We know about that. Maybe they're tired, and they're going up on the road against a strong team. Spread's not that huge. What do you think about Indiana -6?
Not only are they playing back-to-back, but they're playing 3 games in 4 days, and as you said, the Pacers, they've got the best net rating in the entire NBA over the last 7 games at plus 11.1, and if somebody's watching these videos for the first time, that is based on offensive versus defensive points per 100 possessions. So basically, they've been very, very good. Chicago, during the same span's been fine, but only at plus 1.9. And more specifically, the Pacers really playing great defense. Over the last 5 games, the best defensive efficiency in the NBA, allowing a mere 91.1 points per 100 possessions. So, yeah, I would agree with you that maybe the Pacers do seem obvious. I don't have either an official premium play on that or an official free pick, but yeah, I can't merely make an argument for Chicago.
And then there's 2 other games that I want to ask you about. Again, maybe there's something fishy about the line, but there are 2 favorites that have been terrible against the spread in recent games. First one I want to ask you about Toronto and Charlotte, right? Toronto's at Charlotte. Right now, Charlotte's a 1-point home underdog, and Toronto is 1-6 against both straight up and against spread over their last 7. Their only win and cover was against Philly. We know the deal with Philly. And Charlotte, kind of playing well. They're kind of dealing with their situations with roster changes pretty well, and they're not killing it against the spread, but they're okay, and they're a home dog of 1 point to Toronto, 1-6 against spread over their last 7. Is Charlotte a great play here, Joe?
I don't know if they're a great play, but yeah, when you look at the type of statistics I just quoted, the Raptors' worst defensive efficiency in the NBA over the last 5 games, allowing a whopping 112 points per 100 possessions, while Charlotte has the best defensive efficiency, allowing 96.7 points per 100 possessions. And, look, Charlotte's playing very good defense. Toronto's not. But what this says, and it kind of makes sense, we have an angle that goes back to 2006. Most of our best angles that we will strongly consider for premium plays go back further, with teams of 34, 67, and 1 at home with at least 1 day of rest off of the win, in which they never trailed when they were an underdog. And that makes sense because it says when an underdog is coming off of a tremendous game, there was probably a reason they're an underdog, and maybe they are set up for a letdown. So that would say to fade Charlotte, but still, all in all, I would lean more towards Toronto. But that system that does make sense to me says I don't know if I'm going to make it an official pick, but yeah, I would still lean a little bit towards agreeing with you.
All right, and the other one, sort of a similar situation, Miami and Washington, right? Washington a 4.5-point home favorite, and Washington has really been tanking. Now, they should get it together at some point in the future. They'll probably, they'll definitely start winning games again. They'll probably be at least a 500 bet again at some point the rest of the season. But right now, 0-7 against spread in the last 7 games. They've lost 7 in a row against the spread. And Miami, not much better. They're 1-4-2 against spread over their last 7, but they seem to have more life to them. With Dragic now and Wade, they're more guard-oriented, maybe scoring a little bit more and playing kind of well. Maybe Washington gets a win here, but considering they've lost 7 in a row against the spread as a 4.5-point favorite, is that maybe a little bit too much? Maybe a Miami plus 4.5 a decent bet?
Probably not. So the thing that would make me a little nervous, not so much this year as they have been in previous years, but Washington's been one of the top, what I like to call the predictably unpredictable teams, that just when they're playing poorly, they seem to manage to turn it around. But like you said, they've been in a little bit of a long-term struggle. So another case where I would lean towards agreeing with you, not enough to make an official pick, but I would certainly lean towards agreeing with you.
All right, before I make my decision, let's hear what your free picks are for us today. Joe Duffy from OffshoreInsiders.com.
Well, we have 2 teams that are regressing to the mean, and if you actually look at the definition, that's even when you're progressing to your level, that still is regressing to the mean. But basically, 2 teams that are seemingly returning to their level. The Atlanta Hawks are on a 6-10 spread slide after that wacky 31-11 start. The odds makers have finally caught up to them. As I said, Atlanta's learning it's easier to be the hunter than the hunted, and that's one of our golden rules of handicapping. We found that out. Cleveland, look, we knew they had high expectations, but when you're led by the greatest player in the world, LeBron James, a guy who I think at this point he knows when to pace himself. Cleveland was certainly, in theory, the most disappointing team for maybe the first half of the year, but I really wasn't panicking on them. I think that they're built with their veterans led by, as I said, LeBron James. You kind of knew that they could turn it on when they needed to, and they're now 18-6 against the spread after a 13-26 start. They've got the best offensive efficiency in the NBA over the last 5 games, getting 108.4 points per 100 possessions, and they're the best team in the NBA over the last 10 games in that statistic by a very wide margin. So I'm going to go with Cleveland here, as I think that the Cleveland is finally starting to step it up. And why the Hawks, look, I think they're for real as far as they're clearly not as dominant where they were the best team in the NBA for quite some time. I still think that the Hawks are among the elite, but maybe not quite as good as their overall record suggests. So I think a little bit of an undervalued versus overvalued, and I'll go with Cleveland.
All right, Joe. Well, Cleveland right now is a 1.5-point road favorite, so that's going to be your free pick. And for my pick, I think I might make a pivot here. I actually was kind of leaning also towards the over in Miami, Washington, 194.5. Now, the Wizards have been absolutely terrible offensively. They've really been struggling. But at some point, you got to figure they're going to turn it around. And Miami now more guard-oriented, maybe a little bit more offensively productive right now. What do you think about the over 194.5 in Miami, Washington?
Yeah, obviously Miami has had more than their share of injuries this year, but they're starting to get some chemistry. And with a low total, probably not a too bad of a bet. Not something I would try to talk you out of.
All right, that's going to be my pick for this video. Miami, Washington, 194.5 is currently one of the widely available numbers. And again, Joe Duffy's pick, Cleveland, -1.5. All right, Joe, there's a lot of NBA games tonight, a lot of college games tonight. What do you have going on at offshoreinsiders.com? Give a little plug.
A nice sweep last night. We're 9-3 in college basketball in our $1 million march on Las Vegas, 5-2 in the NBA. Got an NBA Wise Guy play, an NBA major, and a college basketball nighttime major play at offshoreinsiders.com.
Sounds awesome. Joe Duffy from offshoreinsiders.com. Talk to you again on Monday.